president. The union president acts as the main spokesperson for USU, chairs the union's board of trustees, and is responsible for the reputation, leadership, and direction of USU as a democratic organisation. They work closely with the university's vice-chancellor and staff team, as well as key contacts in the city of York, and most importantly, students.
Joined by Pierrick, who's our first candidate for union president. Good evening.
Hiya.
I suppose to start with, what's USU doing wrong, and what are you going to change?
Right, well, I think USU isn't necessarily doing anything wrong, but I think they're not addressing a lot of issues that are happening within the union. And I think that starts first off with student representation, and I think that needs to be sorted out. This isn't a USU-specific thing. It's happening throughout the uni, and we need better representation. I don't know how else I can stress this.
And how do you make that happen? How do you change representation?
I think there's a misunderstanding of how representation happens at USU. You have this idea of like officers getting elected, and suddenly they have like this massive power over the union and the university. But that's not how it's happening. Officers have limited power within committees they sit on in universities, and some of them they don't actually necessarily sit on committees that they actually represent as well. And within the union, staff don't necessarily listen to officers, and I think that needs to change profoundly because we're a union for students, by students, and I think we need to get back to that.
And you know, so what makes you the person to make that change? If it's a problem with SUs around the country, if it's something that happens, surely you're going to run for president, you come in and everyone's going to ignore you, not going to get anything done.
Yeah, I feel like with my previous experience with being an officer, actually calling things out makes things change. And I think I want to continue that. I've been an environment officer for a year now, and all I've done is basically call out bad behavior. And I think that's the only way we get solutions to these problems, is actually saying we've got a problem, and let's find a solution, basically.
Okay. And let's talk about one of the problems you identify in your manifesto. You talk about First Bus. I think the first point you make, it's later on as well. Do you want the university to end its contract with First Bus? Or do you want it to change things about First Bus? Not
necessarily, no. I think we still have a chance to make improvements, but speaking to current officers and even in my own previous work, First Bus hasn't budged. They haven't made any significant improvements, and we're now in a position to say, well, we've got alternatives. Why don't we take them? Because clearly they're more willing to work with us than First Buses is.
Well, what are the alternatives then? If imagine I'm in the university,
yeah,
and I'm responsible for the bus contract, and I've got this contract that isn't even over yet, and you're telling me I should get rid of it and I should find another company to replace them. How do you convince me?
So the way I've gone about it, and this is actually work I've already done, is to directly contact the director of procurement. He's the guy who actually signs the First Bus contracts. And, you know, it's funny because, you know, we're talking about alternatives and things. The university has alternatives. We just don't know what those are. And speaking with him, his name's Rob Hunt. He's told me that actually the university is looking to find alternatives to First Buses because they're now aware of the damage that's happened because of them. And they're looking for a replacement right now.
And what does that change, though? Because, I mean, I know lots of people who come from all around the UK, and they all have problems with buses.
Yeah.
You know, we're not London, we're York. And First Bus obviously a big presence within the city. What changes by having a different provider? How do you actually make sure that makes a difference?
There is a difference because First Buses only manages a few routes in York. It's very limited in terms of the stuff they do. And the issues are quite restricted. We're talking about, you know, adequate services that run on time and that students can rely on. That's not a big ask, and I think that First Bus hasn't delivered on it necessarily. And when we're talking about alternatives, we're talking about a better service because that's the standard. You usually have buses that run on time. That's not a massive ask from any company, especially a busing company, to provide a reliable service.
Okay, and let's talk about another one. Let's talk about rent. You spoke about on-campus accommodation. Yeah. It's been a big topic throughout the campaign. We've heard it this evening. I've heard it before. Mm-hmm. What makes you the person that can reduce rents or force the university to reduce rents when so many people have tried and haven't succeeded?
I don't want the university to. I don't want to force the university to reduce rents. I want them to do it of their own accord. They have no problem absolutely no problem spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on transport or millions of pounds building fancy new buildings. It's not a big ask that they take care of their current students. And it's literally just common sense. Like, if we're willing as a union to call out that bad behavior, those bad decisions, it comes off its own back that, you know, the university is going to change if we're willing to change how they're seen by students.
And I read through your manifesto, and it feels like almost a very different style than we've seen from some previous SABs, right?
Yeah.
It's probably more, like you talk about calling out the university, you talk about maybe a slightly more confrontational approach between the union and the university. Lots of SABs you speak to will talk about being a critical friend of the university, of talking in behind us and getting things done without making a fuss, and, you know, making things happen. Why is that the wrong approach?
I want to make it clear, the university does not care about how students feel. Okay, that's not their job.
Why do they care about how you feel?
That's because I'm going to make a lot of noise about it, and that's the only way we go about stuff. I've been as environment officer. The only way I've gotten things done is by being very angry and very vocal. Any other way just doesn't work because the university doesn't care. That's not their job. Their job is to take care of the university's reputation and make sure students are still signing up. So how do we go about making change as a union? Well, it's about, you know, destroying that reputation a bit so that they understand that, you know, we mean business. We're supposed to be a union here.
Yeah, and why do you think the union hasn't been like that? You know, do you think, you spoke about staff, and I thought it was really interesting, you spoke about staff in the policy process as well. What makes you think that staff are sort of, you know, you talk about holding up the policy process. Are staff in USU the problem?
They're not the problem. I mean, we have to think about, like, staff they've been recruited as students. A lot of them are old students, you know, they're alumni, and they're not necessarily holding the policy process back, but we have to make them aware that they're now staff and they don't get to have a say in how policy is implemented. We vote on policy and it's implemented as it's voted, and that's just, it's as simple as that. For the reason why, you know, SAB candidates want to, like, buddy up with the uni, that seems like a good option because, you know, you want to build out quote-unquote working relationship. So far, I haven't seen any results from that, any meaningful results from that, any meaningful change in how the university goes about its business from that working relationship. So it's not about burning down a bridge, it's about, you know, recognizing the bridge isn't there, and the university only does stuff when it suits them.
I suppose we've got about a minute left now. We're coming towards the end of this time together. And I wanted to ask you, you've got 3 quite different candidates for this role.
Yeah.
Why is your way of doing things the best way of doing things out of the 3?
Because I want to tackle the problems. I just want to get, not necessarily get dirty, but I want to tackle these problems head on. And the first thing we need to do to tackle them is actually recognize them as a problem and call them out. If we're not working as a coordinated SAB team and union on actually recognizing the problems that are going on, then how are we supposed to find solutions for them? Yeah. It seems pretty simple to me.
And I suppose if you could say the one thing that makes you, if you could pick one of your things that you want people to remember about you, one thing that you want people to go over to you and think, that's what Pierrick wants, in 10 seconds, what would you say it is? I
want student well-being. I want students to feel good while they're at uni. It's simple demand. I just want people to go to uni and feel good.
Pierrick, thank you. That's all we've got time for here. We're going to head over to Studio Blue for another interview with the union president candidate.
Hello, I am Beth Hardesty. I'm joined by USU Union Pres candidate